What I would say is you can't deny sort of like the science of success, and when you look at the research in performance psychology, which is what my PhD is in, if you look at what predicts people to be successful, however you define success, you're going to see, these attributes. In my work in the NFL, I started noticing something about adversity and the way players responded to adversity, particularly the players who lasted in the NFL the longest.
Dr. Cindra Kamphoff, a high-performance coach, Amazon bestseller, and award-winning speaker who's coached elite athletes like the Minnesota Vikings and the U.S. Olympic track and field team. She's here to show us how to take bold, courageous action every day and harness the power of positive thinking for lasting success.
In 2013, had a really big, huge, life-changing moment where I was at the Boston Marathon, and that's the year of the Boston Marathon bombing. And if you remember, it was very, very scary to be there. I just finished the race, and to be honest, I didn't know if I was gonna, see my kids the next day. I didn't really know what was going to happen. And but it was kind of in that moment after the race where we were trying to figure things out, and we were in the hotel room and just trying to make sense of the day. And I just had these thoughts in my head that kept on swirling over and over again. And it was like, what difference do you make? Why do you do what you do? Why are you still here?
Welcome to Motivation Monday. We are here with the wonderful Dr. Cindra Campoff. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you.
You are a woman of many things. You are a high-performance coach, an author, award-winning speaker, podcast host, and founder of Mentally Strong Institute.
Yeah.
Quite the resume.
Thank you.
I am very excited to be with you because I know you kind of have a different mentality than most people. You are very inspirational, and your thing is positive thinking.
Yeah.
So I would love to know when you had that pivotal moment of change, when everything kind of changed for you.
Yeah, so great question, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to share a message with you and to be here with you today. There's kind of been two really pivotal moments in my life that shifted everything. I was a high school track and cross-country runner and won the state championship my senior year. And then I got a college scholarship, but it was actually during that time when I was in college that I really struggled with my own mental health and my own mindset. And that's actually how I found sport and performance psychology, was kind of through my own struggles. And then, went and got my PhD to really understand the field. When I moved to Mankato in Minnesota, which is now 17 years ago, I took a job at Minnesota State Mankato. And then in 2013, had a really big, huge, life-changing moment where I was at the Boston Marathon. And that's the year of the Boston Marathon bombing. And if you remember, it was very, very scary to be there. I just finished the race. And to be honest, I didn't know if I was going to, see my kids the next day. I didn't really know what was going to happen. And but it was kind of in that moment after the race where we were trying to figure things out, and we were in the hotel room and just trying to make sense of the day. And I just had these thoughts in my head that kept on swirling over and over again. And it was like, what difference do you make? Why do you do what you do? Why are you still here? And I was kind of saying those things to myself. And it was that day that really shifted everything for me. I felt like, honestly, I was playing small with my life at that moment. And I just decided when I got back just to do things that were just really courageous. And like, could I do something every day that was courageous? And I wanted to write a book, but I didn't know if anyone was going to read it. Maybe people were going to criticize it. I wanted to work for the Minnesota Vikings, but I didn't play football, and I wanted to speak more, but I was working with a lot of sports teams at the time, but wasn't really doing any keynote speaking or anything like that. So that day was, in Bill George's book called True North, he talks about these moments as like crucible moments that changes everything for you. And I think that was a crucible moment for me. And then I decided to do things differently after that day. I enrolled in the National Speakers Association, Speakers Academy, to learn more about like actually how to speak and be more comfortable doing that. And then I would just say like I try to do something every day that's just a little bit courageous, because I know that that helps me live my purpose and impact the people I'm really intended to be here for. And so many times we can play small And, sometimes I even still catch myself playing small. So it's like.
When you say be courageous, what does that exactly mean? If somebody's living kind of the mundane routine every day, what step could they take to be courageous?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I love this quote by Roosevelt. And the quote is, courage is not the absence of fear. It's rather the assessment that something is more important than the fear. And so, it's a good one. And what I like about that is, to be courageous, you actually have to feel the fear. You have to be nervous. You have to be, you have to have that nervousness in your stomach and, to be courageous. And so I think one of the things, especially as you think about starting a new year, it's so important to write your goals down. And what I tell people is they should be slightly out of your comfort zone. They should be things that you're not really sure you can do or you can reach, because goals are meant to inspire you to be your best, and goals are really meant to help you become all you can become. And sometimes we set our goals really small. So, every year I don't accomplish all my goals that I have written down. And it's really important to write them down, by the way, because you hold yourself accountable and then you can look at them every, week. But I don't make and reach all my goals every year because they're just slightly pushing myself. So, I think it's getting clear on what exactly that you want. And then I think of courage like a muscle. Like the more you use it, the better, easier it becomes. And the things that were really scary for you before aren't so scary for you now. Like I would say keynote speaking isn't so scary for me anymore, but at the beginning it was. So, it's like a muscle. And I think when you keep on choosing your courage zone every day, like it helps you live your purpose. And I think it helps you impact the people you're intended to impact in this world.
It's interesting that you've seen kind of your reality change after you focus on what you think about and your mentality.
Yeah.
Why is that so crucial? Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't even think about what I'm thinking about.
Sure.
Why is thinking about what you're thinking about very important?
Yeah, so that's an awesome question. I would say because our thoughts impact our feelings and they impact our actions. And I like to use this acronym called TFA just to kind of keep it simple. It's like what you think about does impact how you feel, and that impacts your actions. And so, for example, if I'm, if I'm driving to work and I'm thinking, it's going to be a really hard day, it's so many things going on, I have so much to do, you're going to get there and you're going to feel overwhelmed and you're maybe going to feel anxious. So that's the feeling. And then you might not take action. You might kind of spin or, waste time. Whereas, if you're driving to work and you're thinking, there's so many great things that are going to happen today, I'm going to accomplish so much. I'm just looking forward to making a difference, even if it's just one step at a time. Then that's going to impact your feelings, and then that's going to impact your actions. So our thoughts are who we become, especially about ourselves. And that statement, I am, is so important. I used to believe that I was terrible at learning people's names. And then what happened is like I wouldn't even learn people's names because I didn't even try. And so, just by having that limiting thought in my head about who I was, it impacted what I did. And so now it's like, well, I'm working to learn people's names, Natalia. So our thoughts, especially about ourselves, repeated over time, becomes who we are and our identity, and that shapes everything. That's like the core of who we are.
I think I think it was Atomic Habits that said, oh, well, you said you're bad at math because in 5th grade you didn't like math. Well, when did you ever open up a math book again? And now you have this claim over yourself, I am bad at math, when in reality you just haven't tried again.
Exactly.
So it's interesting how we label ourselves and then we perceive ourselves that way for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, somebody wants to change and they're working on it and their mentality is getting better and their thoughts are positive, and then a crash happens and now it's all the old habits. What is your advice to those that want to change but don't really know how?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I love this concept from Daniel Amen in his book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And it's called Automatic Negative Thoughts. And I wrote about it in both of my books. The power of that is the thoughts we have are automatic, right? And so I used to have this goal that I was going to be 100% positive all day long. But I think it lasted like 1 hour, it's like, because it's just not possible. The reason that we have automatic negative thoughts is because our thoughts keep us safe. And, we wouldn't go walk out in front of a driving car right now, because we don't want to get hit. And so the thoughts we have do keep us safe in many ways, and they're automatic. And just actually realizing that I don't choose all the thoughts that I have. My friend Krista Ryan, I just interviewed her on my podcast, and she has this part in her book where she says, who's in control? Is it the thinker or the thought? And when I read that, I was like, my brain kind of was like, psh, exploded. And I was like, do you want the thinker to be in charge, like you as the person, or is the thought in charge? Right. And so many times we let the thought be in charge. And so I think taking a step back and noticing what you're thinking about, that concept is called metacognition, and just like notice, what am I thinking about right now? And just noticing that is the first step in thinking more powerfully about yourself. But I do think it's unrealistic just to say, I'm going to be positive all the time. Because let's say someone gets injured, or we're having a health issue, or, someone we love is sick. Like that's toxic positivity if we're like, everything is awesome, you know? So, but getting unstuck from that thought is really important. Mm-hmm.
My thing is, if I'm alone and I wake up and the day's good, I'm happy, and then something happens at work or at home, and then it just completely shifts my day.
Yeah.
How do I not let the outside control the inside?
Yeah, that's so important. There is this quote by Viktor Frankl. He was in a concentration camp, and he was a psychiatrist, and he lost his family during this concentration camp. And he has this quote where he says, like, between stimulus and response, there is space. And there's space to choose our response. And I love that idea that we can't control all these things in the outside world. In my book, one of my pillars of Beyond Grit is to dominate the controllables. And what that means is I kind of draw a circle in the book, and we list kind of all the things you can't control. Like today, snowing. I can't control the snow. I can't control you. I can't control my family. I can't control if we're in a sports team. We can't control the play calling, the starting positions, the competitors, the score, because we can't fully control all the things, And in my work with the Minnesota Vikings, I had this really cool opportunity the first year to interview all the rookies. Okay, and so these are guys who are trying to make the team. And, they have this huge, courageous goal of making it to the NFL. Well, what I found was the players who, in that first interview with me, if they were focused on things they couldn't control, like where they went in where they were in the depth chart, or their signing bonus, or where they went in the draft, none of them made the team. But if they were focused on what they could control, their own attitude, their preparation, their passion, their purpose, their emotions, their energy, like all the things about themselves, they were more likely to make the team. And so I thought about this, and, I thought to myself, well, for every minute they're focusing on things they can't control is one less dollar, maybe even $100 that they're earning, because, they get paid pretty good. And so for you and me, like if you own your own business, or you are a leader in some way and you're trying to advance in your career, I do think for every minute we focus on things we can't control, it's like one less dollar, or maybe multiple dollars that we're not earning, because we're holding ourselves back and we're stuck, right? But that's so hard. It's so hard to focus on what you can control. Every day I find, myself focusing on something I can't. So it's about noticing and then getting your attention back to what you can control.
That's really beautiful. I actually wrote that down, that you had said that in business, for every minute you focus on something you can't control, one less dollar. That is insane.
Yeah.
How have you seen your life shift after you kind of started doing positive thinking and kind of shifting your mentality?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, like, first, I'm not perfect, So one time I was wearing the shirt that said 100% positive, and my son was like, "Mom, that's not true." I was like,
99.
Oh, I'm trying, I'm trying. But I'm, I guess what I would just say, like, I'm human just like everyone else. But I think that I practice all of these practices every day, and the practices in Beyond Grit are called practices because we do have to practice them every day. We're not 100%, perfect at all of them every day. And so usually, like, when I speak, I give people this sheet and I say, circle the one that you're really great at today. Circle the one that you feel like you could grow in today. Just this idea that it's a practice. But what I would say about my own life is I feel like I'm in control more of my responses. And instead of like letting things trigger me or letting things impact me, I'm more in control of my response and more in control of like moving through hard things, and I do think, I'm able to impact more people in a positive way when I'm practicing what I preach. And I'm able to, if it's getting on more stages or opportunities like this, or, coaching people one-on-one, which is what we do at Mentally Strong. I think it helps me just like live in a courageous way when I'm practicing more of these things.
Okay, I'm going to throw a tough one at you.
Okay.
What do you say to those people that are like, I don't really believe in all that? Because I love motivating myself, training my brain. But I've come across a lot of people that are like, well, Like, what do you say to those people?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say is you can't deny sort of like the science of success, and when you look at the research in performance psychology, which is what my PhD is in, if you look at what predicts people to be successful, however you define success, you're going to see, these attributes like being mentally strong and gritty and understanding what your purpose is and moving on quickly and being courageous and understanding yourself, right? So if you just look at the research is undeniably, consistent. Even if you interview, let's say if you interviewed, the top NFL players, NBA players, or the top executives, they would also say, that their own thinking about themselves is what has elevated their career, right? Mm-hmm. Because our thinking is how we perceive the whole world, and what we focus on is what ends up growing. I think maybe the people that might say, well, this isn't for me, might be just saying like positive thinking isn't for them, and I think what's important is, there's several types of self-talk, the way we talk to ourselves. There's motivational self-talk, and there's instructional self-talk, and more of the positive self-talk, and there's even negative self-talk. And negative self-talk is not always bad. Mm-hmm. It can actually sometimes motivate us. But I think one thing about your thoughts that's really important is you don't want to just be fake. Or, if you're saying, well, positive thinking doesn't really work for me, I think what's important is maybe you're not being true to yourself. Maybe you're just kind of just being positive when you don't even really believe it. Yeah. And so that's what I would say to that person. If they're listening, they're probably listening.
Yeah,
someone out there is listening like that. Yeah.
You were saying how waking up with a purpose every day. Well, yeah. Some people don't know their purpose. What is exactly my purpose, mm-hmm. and what is the goal that I'm waking up every day for? Mm-hmm. What do you say to those people?
Purpose
Me as well.
Me as you, yeah. Well, you have a purpose right here. You have a purpose to disseminate really powerful information, and because people need motivation, they do. And I think of like everyone struggling with something, and so we need to really keep our mind on purpose, especially when it tends to be negative. Like our meaning, just because we're human, negative events get stored more quickly and they linger longer. Just because you're human, right? Yeah. And so we need tools to get us unstuck. About purpose, though, I think of purpose like pulling back the layers of an onion. And it's hard just to wake up and say, what's my purpose? When I got back from the Boston Marathon bombing, I did a lot of reading and reflections, trying to figure out what I was intended to do and what I was called to do and like what's really what I'm supposed to do. And I read this really powerful book by Richard Leiter. So Richard is a Minnesota author, and he wrote a book called The Power of Purpose. And his research actually shows that we live up to 7 to 10 years longer when we understand our purpose and live with it, right? So we live longer. It's important for our life satisfaction, our own wellness and well-being, and we're more likely to thrive when we understand our purpose. Just even saying that, though, when I read his book, it was like, okay, now I know the importance of purpose, but what is my purpose? And when I wrote Beyond Grit, the second practice in Beyond Grit is purpose. And I gave people an outline in the book on how they could write a purpose statement, because I feel like it's kind of like we expect like purpose to be like a download, like what's my purpose? Yeah. It's like, it just like comes to us. But if I give people a structure to like write the purpose statement, so I gave people 4 questions. And then I gave them a structure to start writing a purpose statement. And then usually what I tell people is like, write it out, put it on a sticky note, put it in your bathroom mirror. When you look at it every day, do you look at that and say, that's exactly why I'm here? Okay, great. If you do, then start living with that intention. So for example, I know my purpose is to provide really tangible strategies to people so they can get unstuck. And I know my purpose is to help people play bigger. That might be on the field or in the sports arena, but it also might be in their life or in their business or their career. And, I know that I'm here to live authentically, like to show up as Cindra Kamphoff, because that's how I connect with others instead of trying to be somebody I'm not, So when I say that to you, I'm like, yep, that's why I'm here. That's my whole reason for being here. So I tell people to start with like answering those 4 questions and then design a statement that you could use to guide you. And then I think it's really important to remind yourself of that every day. In Beyond Grit for Business, I wrote about a grit priming tool. And it's just a way to kind of start your morning. Some people use it just to get ready for the day or a big meeting, or you might do it to get ready for the podcast, And it's just 4 parts. 4 parts that I just say, like, do 1 minute each. And G stands for gratitude. So just 1 minute of gratitude has a lasting impact, You can be grateful for big things, small things. R stands for remember your purpose. Why are you here? How do you want to live your purpose today? If it's, through the podcast or other ways. I stands for intention. And this just means, what are 3 things that how do you want to show up today? I want to be courageous and authentic and passionate. Like that's how I'm at my best. And then T stands for talk to yourself. And this just means like talking to yourself really powerfully, reminding yourself of your strengths, who you are, and who you want to become more of. And that, again, your thoughts become your beliefs over time. So that could be a way to start the day or prime yourself for a meeting. I have it, you can download it at beyondgrit.com/morning if you want to check it out there. There's a PDF download there.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's say I have a big goal. I have a big dream. It's huge. And then I believe it, but then all of a sudden doubt comes into play and outside circumstances, and I'm just like, oh, I'm giving up on it.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
A lot of people, I think, have that same idea, right? When I decided I wanted to work for the Minnesota Vikings, there were a lot of people that were like, what? How are you going to do that? Good luck with that, especially as a woman, And I've been working with football teams now for, 13 or 14 years, right? I love it because football gives me so much energy. And I love the passion about football. And so, I would just say you get to make it happen. And there's going to be naysayers. There's always going to be people who are going to say you can't do it.
And laugh and make fun of you. And
Yeah. Or say like, really, how are you going to do that? In my work in the NFL, I started noticing something about adversity and the way players responded to adversity, particularly the players who lasted in the NFL the longest. The NFL career is only 2.3 years. So players really don't stay very long in the NFL. And I noticed that they had what I call a watch me mentality. So let's say they have a really bad game. And they're just trash on social media and in the Star Tribune or on national newspapers or whatever. They can respond and say, yeah, you're right, I don't deserve to be here, and really believe that. Or they can respond and say, watch me, I'll show you. And I think that's a really healthy way, as long as it doesn't become so extreme, to be like, okay, if you don't think I can do it, watch me, right? And like, I'm going to prove that I can do it. And I think that's like a more motivating way to respond. And I think what's important is, again, your goals should be courageous, because think about who you can become by having those courageous goals. In the book, I talk about the difference between an outcome, a performance, and process goal. An outcome goal is something we can't actually control. Like you fully can't control how many people listen to this interview, or you can't control let's say you have this big idea of being on ESPN someday. Okay.
You trust me?
Okay, awesome. Or whatever it might, Fox News, I don't know, whatever. You can't fully control that because you can't control if people bring you in or not.
Yeah.
So we want to have big, courageous outcome goals, but we want to be careful on when we think about those because like an athlete, for example, if they're thinking about those leading up to the competition, usually I say 24 hours before the game, you should be focused more on the process, the small things you can do today to reach that goal, because that's what's going to give you more confidence, decrease your anxiety. Sometimes those outcome goals can create fear and anxiety because they're out of our control. And so I would just say, like, write that courageous goal down and then think about how can you break it down and what are the small things you can do that are in your control to try to get there.
Let me ask you this. I'm the type of person, and maybe this is not the best quality of myself, but if I want something, I'm like, I want it now. Like, when is it going to happen? And it kind of comes from like a place of lack. It's like, oh, I don't have this and I need it. So how do I train myself to trust the process and believe it'll happen and not kind of spew desperate energy? Does that make any sense?
It does make sense. Yeah. And I think of, being mentally strong. It's really about having abundance, energy instead of scarcity,
Good point.
And I think what that means to me is like believing great things are coming to you. Maybe even saying that to yourself every day, like great things are coming to me. Of course you got to put in the work to make it happen, right? But scarcity is more like there's only so much to go around. And we can get in this space in my field in performance psychology where there's like, we might think, well, there's only so many teams I can work with or people I can work with. Well, there's, millions of leaders and athletes and entrepreneurs. It's more about, attracting them. And when you think about getting where you want, if we have more of this abundance mentality that like great things are coming to us, they're more likely to come to us, right? Because we're attracting it and we're living with more of a higher level of energy. So I would say that, and it is hard to sometimes be patient.
Yep.
I'm not so great sometimes at being patient myself. But I have a exercise in the workbook actually where I have people write down everything they want to accomplish or do or contribute in the next 20 years, which is kind of a long time. And then you break it out by, okay, what would be possible in 15 years or 5 years or 3 years? And I did this several years ago, and then I typed it all up, and then it's actually in my office at home. And it's just behind a door so that I can kind of just look at it once in a while. And what was cool was I had a goal of working with an Olympic team. And then I had the amazing opportunity to work with the United States track and field team, like the team that goes
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That is very cool.
Amazing. And like the athletes I met through that are just phenomenal, but it was going to be a 10-year goal. But then meeting the right person at the right time just happened to set me up for that opportunity. And so, if I wouldn't have written that goal down, maybe when that opportunity came up, I wouldn't have taken it, But I think because I decided that's something I really desired and I wrote it down, I think that's the first step in like attracting things. But grit is about being patient and persisting and, continuing on and staying the course with really what you want. And, I think just even by saying statements like trust the process or trust yourself or good things will come my way, I think those are all really powerful things to say to yourself.
When I watch podcasts like of inspiration, motivation, they all say write down your goals. Why is writing down goals so beneficial?
I think it's beneficial for many reasons. I think it's like a commitment to yourself when you write it down. And then you can follow up with it regularly. We have this phrase in my field called ink it, don't just think it, and it's like, write it down. I think also you can hold yourself accountable and you can share it with other people. And so we want to write our goals down in a measurable way, not just like if we said, I want to increase the downloads on these podcast episodes. Okay, great. But how much do you want to increase it by? Be specific.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason you want to be specific because then your brain is going to look for reasons that you can increase it by 5,000 downloads or something like that, right? And then you can find all the different ways. So this is a great time of the year to really think about what is it that you really, really want, right? And the writing it down makes a commitment to yourself. And I have my goals, my 1-year goals posted in my office. And so I can look at them weekly. It's usually what I do. And sometimes they're like, oh man, I have a lot of work to do on those, but you can also see your progress, which is really helpful.
It's interesting because you said share your goals. Some people say share your future goals. Others say no. What do you think the right answer is, or is there no right answer?
I think you should share it with people that you trust.
Okay.
And to me, what that means is, if you don't trust them or you think that they're going to ridicule you or not support you, then, then don't share them. But I think there is power in accountability of just like my sister is someone I really trust, and I'm going to share with her, or my husband, Dan, I'm going to share with them, hey, here's the things I'm working on. They can also understand me and, what I desire for the year. And so I would just say, like, share them with people that you trust, but definitely write them down and post them somewhere, because your brain, when you see those types of things, right, it starts working at a subconscious level. And it's like, well, how can I actually reach that goal? And so that's why it's so powerful to post them in places that you can see them. And again, just slightly out of your comfort zone, so you're really pushing yourself for the year.
I learned something new. I saw that your conscious mind you could control, your subconscious you can't. And the subconscious takes on everything. So how can you be the goalie and stop whatever goes into your subconscious? And this might be going into a whole different territory, but I am curious.
Well, that's an awesome question because, I do think a thought repeated over time becomes a belief. And sometimes we have these limiting beliefs that we don't even realize, or we, that we're operating from. And sometimes it's, for example, I do a lot of coaching with entrepreneurs and business leaders. And I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and he was saying, I feel like there's no way that I'm going to be able to reach this goal. And he was talking about, all of a sudden something came up for him that said, like, I'm never going to amount to anything. And I was like, whoa, where did this come from? And then we kind of pulled back the layers. And again, in the subconscious, it was, I was on the football team in college, and my coach told me I'd never amount to anything.
Oh, gosh.
And then like 20 years later, this is still something that is limiting him. And, so we had to poke holes in this thought. Like, is this thought even true? Is this thought serving you? I call this tool the truth meter. And it just includes like 3 questions. Is this true?
Yeah.
Are you really going to amount to nothing? No, it's not true. Is this serving you? No, believing in this is not serving me. So again, what's a different thought that you can choose, a more empowering thought? Because it's likely that we can choose a new thought, right?
Yeah.
And so we all have limiting beliefs that we're working through. And sometimes those thoughts, those beliefs come from how we grew up. What I find is especially about money. It's like people have a lot of limiting beliefs about money and what's possible, even what's possible for them. And they might have, had some. I think we've all had people say things to us that aren't very kind, when we're growing up, or maybe it's our family members. And so we just really have to take a step back and say, is that actually really even true? And then you can choose a new thought. And again, a thought repeated over time becomes a belief. And the brain is moldable. That's what's incredible about it is that, we can change our brain. We can change what we believe about ourselves.
Why do we accept certain beliefs? Like, why do we always accept the negative ones and not the positive ones?
Yeah, because we're programmed to see what's wrong instead of what's right. Even with what's wrong with ourselves, or what's wrong with the situation, or what's wrong with the world, and we do have a lot of negativity coming at us in general. And so just our brain is programmed to find what's wrong. And so just even realizing that can be really helpful, just to notice, hey, there's nothing wrong with you if you're not believing in yourself, or you're focused more on the negative. Like, you're just human. Okay, so now, can I use some tools to get back on track and really believing what I want to believe about myself and what's possible for myself? I think we all have those naysayers at some point. And so just remember, it's way more important what you think about yourself than what anybody else thinks about you. And your opinion of yourself is the most important thing than anybody else's opinion of you.
Oh, you're so wise. I love that. I would love to talk more about your book, Beyond Grit.
Okay.
Amazon bestseller. Very cool.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. I appreciate you saying that.
So what can people expect once they read Beyond Grit?
I think my purpose informed my writing in Beyond Grit because it's very practical, easy to read. I wrote it in a way that like I'd want to read something where it's 10 practices, but then really short chapters in these 10 practices. And so you can read it from the beginning to the end, or you can go to something that you're struggling with and you can read that chapter. And so that's what I like about it. It's very practical. Usually every chapter has a story, kind of why you should, use this tool. And then it includes a tool. And so it's really like this rich book that provides people high performance tools to be at their best more consistently. And it's fun because the athletes that I work with and the leaders that I work with, entrepreneurs or business leaders, usually I give them, send them a copy, and then they do some work in between our coaching sessions to help them develop the tools and strategies. And these tools and strategies relates to everybody. Just anybody who wants to be their best more often and that they want to get out of their own way, or they know that they're playing small and they really want to play bigger. That's what I would say it's for. I wrote it for like my younger self,
Nice.
wishing I had it.
Can you give an example of a tool that is in your book? Not to give anything away, but I am curious.
Oh, yeah. So one of my favorite tools is something called Learn, Burn, Return. And it's a tool about living and letting go. And which is actually, of the 10 practices, the one that most people struggle with. And the tool goes, well, actually, I tell this great story about Adam Thielen, who, used to be a Minnesota Viking. And he, during a playoff game a few years ago, he pretended to flush a toilet. Okay, and so this ESPN reporter named Courtney saw Adam do this during the playoff game and went up to Adam afterwards and said, Adam, what are you doing? And, so much pressure during the playoff game for wide receivers. Like, what was this action? And if you're listening to this, he kind of put his fist by his cheek and kind of pushed it down. And so Adam said, well, I'm pretending to flush a toilet. And
she was like, what?
Exactly. And the next day in ESPN, and so I can tell the story because it was written about in ESPN, but the headline said, mental coach taught Vikings Adam Thielen how to flush away his mistakes, And I'm like, that's how I get headlined in ESPN, flushing a toilet. Anyway, but he was using the tool Learn, Burn, Return. And so you can use this tool anytime you're overthinking, anytime you wish you would have done something different, anytime you've made a mistake, anytime you're ruminating, anytime you've experienced a disappointment. And I call it a mental recovery tool because it allows people to get back to the moment. And so you learn, and I actually have these actions, okay? You learn, and you just say, next time I will. And then the burn is you choose an action or a phrase. What I say is how fast, that fast, or what Adam would do is flush a toilet. Or maybe you just say, if you're in sports, you might say next play, or move on, or, let it go. And then you return. This is the return, the power pose.
Okay. Should I do it with you?
Yes, I like that. I like for sure. And there's a whole bunch of research on power posing, which I can share. But the idea is that you return confidently. You build yourself back up, even though you made the mistake. And a couple weeks ago, I had this opportunity to speak at a quarterback camp. And it was really special because my son is part of this quarterback camp. It was the first time my younger son has ever heard me do like a workshop. And I was actually really nervous because
was he there? You're like, please don't look at me.
I was like, I did not look at him much because I was like, don't get in your head about your son being there. And I taught Learn, Burn, Return to these quarterbacks. It was really fun. And afterwards, the quarterback coach, Quinn, went up to Blake, is my son, and he said, Blake, you've heard all of these tools before, right? You've learned, because I taught Learn, Burn, Return, and I taught Control the Controllables. And Blake goes, yeah, I've been Learn, Burn, and Returning since I came out of the womb.
And flushing the toilet.
Anyway, it was really funny.
Oh, my God. But these are great practices that he has if he's ever having a bad day. Like, he knows exactly what to do. And I feel like the average person doesn't really know what to do.
And how to reset.
Yeah.
And Learn, Burn, Return is one of my favorite tools because it helps you reset and move on And so many times, I use it every day with something that maybe I felt like didn't go great for me, or I made a mistake, or, I just need to get back to the moment. Yeah.
I'm going to give you a question. So if a person wants to change and they see this video and they're like, it's time for me to change my life, sure, I'll start thinking more positively, but then there's those habits that you kind of fall back into. What is your advice for them to kind of start getting their life together and changing their lifestyle?
Yeah. Again, you ask great questions.
I try.
I love it. What I would say first is I think that we have to train our mind every day. And just like a pro athlete, what I would say, they have to. Because if they don't, someone else is going to get ahead who maybe is more mentally strong, might have the same physical ability as you. But, one way you can set yourself apart as an athlete is your mental strength. And we have to train our mind every day. Even if we're not an athlete, you and I need to. Because if not, we can just go in this downward spiral. And what mental performance work allows you to do is to help you learn the tools and strategies. So every day you're training your mind in some way. Every day you're getting unstuck and resetting. And so I would say that's the first step is, can you do something every day to train your mind? I love reading books or listening to books because, something like Beyond Grit can give you the tools to help you get unstuck and help you thrive more. But listen to podcasts, listen to positive things, like bring positiveness into your mind every day so that you're learning and growing in that mental strength. And then I would say, start writing down some goals and what you want. So many times we can kind of get in this victim mentality, and I talk about it in Beyond Grit. I describe it as kind of victim or creator. And the victim is, and I've been there. I would say, I started our conversation today talking about when I was a college athlete. So I ran at the University of Northern Iowa, and I was a track and field athlete and cross country athlete there. But I thought that the more I beat myself up, the better I would do. But it was actually quite the opposite. I would my motivation and my confidence would continue to decrease. And at one point my senior year, I literally just wanted to quit. And I had so much talent. I had these really huge goals of becoming an All-American or an Olympic athlete. And perhaps I had the talent, but I definitely didn't have the mindset. And so most of the reasons I was stuck in college was because I thought things were happening to me. And there's an amazing quote by Byron Katie. And she said, "What if everything happens for you, not to you?" Okay. And what that means is even the really difficult things, there's a gift. I think about the experience being at the Boston Marathon bombing. I chose to see that as me being there was a gift, and meaning I wish that never happened. And, and those people didn't die. And I wish all that didn't happen. But what I also know, and I guess I should say, is that I chose to see it in a way that supports my growth. And so I think why that's so important is because when we're going through difficulties, we can ask ourselves, what's the gift here? How can I grow through this? How can I just not get through it? But what's really the thing I'm supposed to learn? And we can really frame those difficulties as opportunities. And that takes so much mental strength, maybe even writing it down when you're stuck and reminding yourself of that consistently. Mm-hmm.
What is your opinion on vision boards?
Yes.
Do you love them? Do you hate them? Are you in support of them? What is your
I
opinion?
love them.
Okay.
I love them. Actually, over the break, I bought one for each of my kids and my husband, so we're going to do them together. But I think you can have a vision board where you think about the things that you want in the future, or you could just have the goals written out. Maybe you do what I suggested where you have you just brainstorm what are all the things you want to achieve or give or contribute in the next 20 years, and then you write them out. And I think just having some kind of visual reminder is really important, again, because your brain works at a subconscious level of making it happen. And so I think that's why that's so important. But I think I think vision boards are really powerful. I also think, I call this the $1 million confidence board is what I call it. And I worked with this Olympic athlete who is a heptathlete, and she's so incredible. So that means over 7 where over 2 days she does 7 events. And they're all diverse. It's like the javelin and the shot put and the 100-meter hurdles and the 800. So you have to be like fast twitch muscle fibers, but endurance, and you have to be strong and flexible and fit. I mean, this is all around athlete. And leading up to this last Olympic Games, she started kind of questioning herself. Does she have what it takes? And just like everyone can question themselves. And what we did is we made a confidence board. And she just got like one of those poster boards from CVS or wherever. And she started putting on this board her past accomplishments, like pictures of her past accomplishments, or her small wins. So she'd have a great practice. She'd put, like the time that she ran or the reps that she ran. And over time, it became this representation of things that she had accomplished. And, confidence is something we can choose. It is fragile. We're not confident 100% of the time, all the time, but it is a choice and it is a decision. And sometimes we have to be really intentional about reminding ourselves of our accomplishments, because we forget. And even someone like her who had already gone to the Olympics, she just forgot some of the things that she had done. So you could do a vision board or you can make a confidence board like that, but whatever serves you to be your highest self.
Very cool. And you've met a lot of successful people. Is their mindset different? Do they really all work on themselves and what they think about all the time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they're just aware of it and they're working to really be intentional with their thoughts about themselves and about the world, because you and I can see the same thing happen. Let's say we go outside and we watch an accident happen, like a car accident. You might have a different perception of that than I might, right? Because our perception is what shapes our world. And so I would say those people that are successful that they have been working on themselves. And you are the hardest person to lead. You are, and sometimes we think of leadership as something like you're a manager and you lead others, but you lead yourself every day. You lead others every day. And so when you can continue to work on yourself and be your best, it's only going to help other people around you. But I would say for sure, when I think about the athletes that I've worked with that consistently thrive, they know that they have to be on purpose with their mind. And, just like you and me, they can get stuck. They can have hard months or weeks, but they work to get back on track. Yeah.
How does environment influence the way you think? Because it could be easy to motivate yourself when you're around like-minded individuals. But let's say you're in a place where you don't see that.
Yeah.
It really influence the way you think. What do you have to say on that?
Yeah, there's a great quote by Jim Rohn. So he's a motivational speaker, and Jim said, "You're the average of the 5 people you spend time with." And every time I say that, people are like, "Oh, okay. Am I spending time?"
Start thinking,
who are the 5 people? Should I be spending time with those people? But the research actually shows consistent findings that we do become the people that we're around. So, think about how can you level up your environment or the people that you're around or your network. And that might be like as a professional joining networking groups where you see people who, you can network with different professionals in the community. You could join organizations or conferences, people who are doing similar work as you. And because you can, one way that I know has worked for me to elevate my own game and elevate my own belief in myself is to surround myself with people who, push me, that are just a little bit better than me or maybe a lot better than me. That's why I love like the National Speakers Association, because like I go there every time and I'm like, whoa, I got to keep getting better, But what I would say is, yes, environment does shape you. Sometimes we can't control that environment. You couldn't control the environment that you grew up in.
Yeah.
We can't even fully control our culture in our workplace. We contribute to it, but we can't fully control it. And so just realizing that we're one person that does impact the culture of our family, of our environment. And so just even reflecting on what kind of person do I want to be in that environment? And that's where that maybe grit priming tool comes in. It's like, all right, how do I want to show up today? Is that I intention? Is like, how do I want to show up and who do I want to be? And just being consistent with that.
Gotcha. I'm going to rewatch this podcast every morning, get myself motivated. Now I know what to do.
I love it. I love it.
For somebody that doesn't know where to get your book and wants to learn more, where can they go?
They can go to Dr. Cindra, so DrCindra.com. You can also go to beyondgrit.com and you can find the books, the workbooks. I have some cool motivational cards. You can find more about our coaching over at Mentally Strong Institute. And we have a team of coaches who work with leaders and entrepreneurs and business leaders, like executive coaches. And then we have a group of mental performance coaches that works with athletes. Just this idea, that we all need a coach by our side to help us get unstuck and help us think more powerfully about ourselves. I've had my own same coach for 10 years. She's helped me continue to think bigger about myself. So
wonderful. I'm going to ask you one last question.
Sure.
You've given us a lot of wise words and advice. If you could tell yourself, your younger self, a piece of advice, what would that be?
Aw, that's a great question. I'm like, first of all, this has been a blast. So thank you so much for just having me and asking me really amazing questions. And it's fun to kind of share more about my work and what I've been studying. I go back to my experience as a college athlete. And that's when I felt most like I was a victim, that things were happening to me and not for me. And I think if I would have chosen that mindset, I would have seen the gifts or seen how I could have gotten stuck. I wish that time period of my life would have been different because I could have just had so much more success there. But I do think it happened for a reason because I probably wouldn't be talking to you, if I wouldn't have experienced that difficult time. But what I would tell myself during that time is like, be kind to yourself. And there's this whole really amazing body of research by a researcher named Kristen Neff, and she studies self-compassion. And she describes 3 parts of self-compassion as being like self-kindness is number 1, being kind to yourself, softening that inner voice, listening to yourself more as an inner coach than an inner critic. And then number 2, the second part of self-compassion is what's called common humanity, which means like everybody suffers, everybody's struggling with something. So that helps us just realize we're not alone. And then the last part is something called mindfulness. And this just means when we notice ourselves, listening to ourselves being really harsh and critical, just noticing it and realizing we don't have to believe everything we think, right? And just letting that thought be. And that's the advice I'd give to my younger self is just be a little kinder to yourself, Cindra. You're doing the best that you can. And you have everything inside you that you need. And, just believe in yourself.
That is really great advice. I have to tell myself that every day. I just want to thank you for coming on here and sharing your story and giving us very wise advice. So Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, Natalia. I appreciate you having me. Yeah.